Hi, my name is Katie Onan and welcome to the Glow Interviews. I am a psychic, author, motivational speaker and coach. The Glow Interviews is a place where we can meet some really amazing and inspiring people who will help us to be hopeful of a brighter tomorrow and feel really empowered within our own lives. All of the contact details for both myself and my featured guests are in the description box below, so please feel free to check us out if you wish to do so. Today's guest is Jason Edwards. Jason is a man with many strings to his bow. Not only does he work as a civil and commercial crisis negotiator and mediator, but he's also a hypnotherapist, best-selling author with his book Letting Go Gently, as well as a therapist and NLP practitioner. He specializes in helping people who have been through trauma, addiction, post-traumatic stress disorder, relationships and abuse. So he's a man that certainly knows his subject very, very well, and I am deeply, deeply honoured to have this chance to chat with him today. So thank you, Jason, for being here. How are you?
I'm very well, Katie. It's really nice hearing my bio there. I didn't realise I was so busy or had so many strings to my bow. We can add a new one as well if you like, and
yes,
divorce and separation coaching. Which is something else I've just started doing. But I think when you look at someone and they have that huge umbrella of all those things, to me, they always just seem to come down and settle on one thing, and that's human emotion.
I like that. Yeah, because everything you do basically boils down to that, doesn't it? So that makes total sense.
Whether it's crisis negotiation for the police, whether it's working with people that have been victims of narcissistic abuse, whether it's therapy, whether it's coaching, mediation, everything always comes down to human emotions. No doubt about it.
Do you find that everything you do tends to complement each other really well then, and kind of do you cross-reference them when you're working on one to the other?
I think you have to be really mindful to recontract, and you have to be careful of what hat you're wearing when you start working with someone. Because initially someone can come and see you and it could be in the role of therapist or mediator, and then you might actually help them resolve what it is through mediation or through therapy, and they then might want your support as a coach. So I think it's where you start to redirect them and help them to move forwards, because I always see anything as therapeutic. I always say that's the stuff that lives behind us. That's the stuff in the past. Anything to do with mediation, resolution, that's probably the here and now. But anything to do regarding coaching, that's always your future. Those are the barriers that you want to bring down to get to the next level. But they're all strung together by emotions, and they're all strung together by humanity, listening and understanding. But you're correct, you do have to be mindful of what hat that you're wearing when you start to help and support people. Yeah,
absolutely, because like people want different things, and I think I realized that in my own work, not everybody is open to everything that you offer. So I think it's very much an individualistic journey, isn't it? And being mindful of that. So yeah, I really like that.
Very much so, yeah.
So obviously over the last 12 months, the world has turned upside down for everybody.
Yeah.
And do you think, because I was thinking what questions to ask you, and what I think you're kind of one of the perfect people to ask this question to, do you think that the world's now going to suffer some kind of post-traumatic stress and trauma from everything we've been through?
Do you know, that is such a relevant question. I'm already getting calls from people and inquiries. In fact, I just spoke to a gentleman a little while ago who is coming out of lockdown, having to go back to work. And he's a very high profile gentleman with a very high profile pressured job. And he's suffering with anxiety. And it's because he's been out of that role for so long and away from everything that he knows, and he's now having to step back into that. So I think there's more a level of general anxiety that people have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, but we've not been dealing with it. we've not been dealing with those things that scare us the last 12 months. We've been sat at home with box sets, a bit of Netflix, being furloughed. Now, I know it's not just been lovely for everyone, don't get me wrong. A lot of people have really suffered. People have lost money, people have lost jobs, and a lot of people have had to go through their all personal traumas through lockdown. So let's not forget those people. But
Yeah.
a vast amount of people have not had to deal with the things that they had to deal with. And I wrote a piece the other day that I've yet to put out, the famous Zoom meeting with Jackie Weaver in the council meeting. Now, what I actually said about that regarding communication and mediation was, because a lot of people love Jackie Weaver and the way she dealt with it, and I thought it was very amusing to watch. But if that had taken place in the real world, where you were all round a table together and that debate was on, you don't have a mute button in real life.
No.
You can't just shelve someone into a separate room. You have to then deal with the conflict. And that's what we've not had to deal with on a proper one-to-one basis for a while now, because such as you and I are talking now, and the therapy that I do and the mediations I've been doing with people, it's all been online, where you can have that quite controlled environment.
Yeah.
But bang, back to reality. And we're back into the real world, and hopefully in a few months' time we will all still be out there. We'll be interacting again, and there will be no button that you can just press where if you want to mute someone or if you've had enough of the meeting. So I think that's going to actually cause some mini traumas in itself.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. And I don't think there's an easy answer to it, I suppose. I was going to say, how would you deal with that? I suppose it's quite individualistic in terms of everybody will have a different take on that. I suppose being aware of where you're at and being aware of how you're feeling is a real key to kind of helping you to move forward, I suppose.
Yeah, and within the role as a mediator, because I've started doing something different in my work, and you are preempting almost some of the things that I've been doing. And this last year I've worked on a new book and a new website, and it is about timing and coming out of that lockdown, and it's looking how we resolve our own disputes, because there's going to be a lot of disputes going on in this world. There's sadly going to be a lot of separations, a lot of divorces. There's going to be a lot of people who have got issues they need to resolve, and it's knowing how to resolve them. And you are correct. The first thing is we have that awareness of who we are. We have that awareness of our own feelings, but also it's having that greater awareness of other people, of other people's emotions and where they might be. And that's where the actual magic happens. That's where we start to actually resolve things, is when we can not only consider ourselves, but consider what other people are going through.
Yeah, real empathy, real kind of understanding that kind of very old-fashioned, I suppose, in a way, phrase of putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, and understanding that if people are reacting towards you, it's not always necessarily about you. You know, they could be going through their own stuff at home and their own lives, and they're obviously projecting that out onto you. So it's really kind of like take a step back from what's going on and have a breathing space rather than knee-jerk reactions, isn't it? I suppose is what's important.
I do a lot of work for the police at the moment in crisis negotiation. And if ever there's a mediation between two different families, between neighbours, I always say to them, my key line is, you never know what's going on behind the other side of the wall. You just hear the noise, you see this, you see things that upset you, but you don't know what is going on for them. And generating that bit of understanding really does help. Mind you, as somebody said to me the other day, my neighbours can have all the trouble in the world, but it still impacts on my life. And I think there is a lot of merit in that.
Yeah, absolutely. I say there's never an easy answer, and I think we live in a world that we want easy answers and quick fixes, but the journey and the process itself is as important as the destination, isn't it? Because it's that what really teaches you who you are and your core values and your beliefs and your strengths. It's the journey itself can be as important as where you want to get to.
And if you've got people who have got very opposing values, you've got people that got very different beliefs, that sets you apart, and that drives you wider and wider apart. And a lot of time people will always approach me and they will say, well, I wouldn't do that. I would never talk to someone that way, and I wouldn't have responded that way. And I said, well, you probably wouldn't have. And that's really nice that you think that way, but you're dealing with someone who thinks differently from you. And they did respond that way to it. But it's understanding what we can actually do to move forwards. So I think one of the things that has actually been highlighted recently is that huge difference of belief system that people actually have, because we've all been at home a lot more. And we've all been interacting at home with our families a lot more, and we've become aware of our neighbors a lot more, which has kind of sent mediations for neighborhood disputes, etc., through the roof, to be perfectly honest. And again, it's trying to find out those little golden threads, those commonalities that are still going to hold people together. The one I most often use is, you're probably going to be living next door to each other for a long time, and neither of you are going anywhere.
Absolutely, absolutely. But it's funny, especially I think social media is really a bad place for this, because it feels like people are very in their views. This is my views, this is what I believe, and anybody who disagrees with me is wrong. And it's like, actually, life is not black and white, you know, life is a very grey thing. And to people to be very in their views can really close people off from even trying to reach out on those threads, can't they?
I think the thing with social media, and we've seen it highlighted recently with Meghan Markle, is people like to pick a side. You feel comfortable when you've picked a side. And the one thing social media, I remember saying this 20 years ago, is that this will be the biggest double-edged sword ever, in that we live in a country that has freedoms and we are free to express ourselves, and that's absolutely fantastic. But then what you've actually got is somebody else who's also free to express themselves. And the amount of conflicting and differing opinions that we've seen, and there's been a huge backlash against people talking against Meghan Markle and what she did, but there's also been a huge group of people who've absolutely galvanized themselves to who she is as a person and what she said. But the fact remains is, from unfortunately where I always sit, people always say to me, you're always on the fence. And what I say to them is, look, I've built my office on the fence. I have to, that's where I live. I live on the fence. For goodness sake, I resolve disputes. Is at some point it's almost like there is no right and there is no wrong. But you can have some shared agreement to understand someone else's position and what they may or may not be going through. And you can't just always wipe out an experience by vetoing it with, but my opinion is. And this is where we actually start to fall into the category of what we have called wise agreements, where we start to get people to look at not so much their differences, but actually look at what lies behind it, separate the people from the problem, as I always say, and then start to find some shared agreement as what's important to both of you.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that is really the core to try and heal and move forward for all of us, is trying to find our common humanity rather than what separates us. Because I think actually, if we sat down and realised, more binds us together than separates us, but we kind of focus on our differences, and that's the way the world's kind of pushed us. And we need to remember, actually, we all want to be happy, and we all want to be healthy, and we all want our families all matter. These are the important things, aren't they, really, moving forward?
They are. And I think when you mention happiness, you're mentioning something hugely important. I was with my son years ago in a bookshop, and they were selling off lots and lots of therapy and self-help books. And I said to my son, right, grab as many as you can. And he grabbed a load and I grabbed them. We got the count loads with piles of books. And it suddenly occurred to me, I said to him, do you know what? Every book here offers you the same thing. And every single book could almost just have the same title: How to Be Happy. Lose weight, stop smoking, have a great relationship, become confident. When you have got all of those things done and sorted, you think to yourself, I will be happy now I've got that done. So they all sell, and I'm the same. You know, I've released 2 books now, and you know, one is about getting over trauma and abuse, spotting it, stopping it, and actually never suffering it again. The new book is all about how to peacefully, amicably resolve your relationship difference, because relationships fall apart. And sadly, this is the state. We've seen a lot of relationships. People have been at home more, and people have, sadly, and it is heartbreaking, it's very upsetting, they've suddenly realized the person who they've been stuck in lockdown all this time is the person they might not now want to spend any more time with. And it's that we're still seeking something, we're still looking for something, but we haven't found it in the person who we're living with. So it's still our great search for happiness on every form.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I saw, because obviously again, do my research, and I saw that you really believe in the 4 R's to change, which are recovery, reposition, reshape, and regenerate. So can you explain what you mean by that to the people watching this?
Okay.
Everyone take a second.
When you look at those 4 components, they're linked.
Yeah.
And we can break them down, we can look at them individually. But what we're always doing here is we're evolving. And it's when we look at recovery, repositioning, and moving forwards and regeneration, what I try and encapsulate them is it's that evolutionary state that we go through. We'll travel down the road, we'll hit a bump in the road, something will happen that's really bad, really traumatic, and it will cause us to question ourselves. It will cause us to question who we are, our place in the world, other people around us. So we'll suffer trauma. We'll often suffer trauma as well. We'll get a real bad psychological knock. So we need to go through that process of recovery. But recovery has to not just get you back to where you were, it has to take you to that higher level. Recovery has to mean something more. It's a beautiful old saying about, I think in ancient China, if they used to smash a lovely pot, they used to seal it back together with gold. Yeah. And that's what I always used to see as recovery. And that is when you actually get to that position of that reorientating yourself, of now looking, who am I going to be? How do I want to be? And that's when we look to the ever elements of, and sometimes people always say this is bad, and I don't think it's bad. I think it's good. I like it. We talk about regeneration. And I like that. I mean, we go through this 7-year internal cycle in our body. I think it's a 7 or 8, where all the organs regrow. And I like that. And I think we do change every 7 years. I know I'm different from the person who I was like 7 years ago.
Absolutely.
Different from the person I was. And in 7 or 8 years, I'll be different again. And we always go through these process of regeneration. It's why Doctor Who's been on telly for such a long time, is they regenerate the character, and it's really clever. You get artists like this, the late David Bowie, Madonna, they kind of like have that period of regeneration, and they reinvent themselves. And I think that's what I always see as those 4 key elements, basically. And again, a little umbrella over those. For me, it's always about that evolutionary state that you go through. And sometimes you might be with someone to do that. And sometimes you might have to travel that journey on your own for a little while and do that by yourself. And I think that's sometimes where we get that real element of recovery, of realizing you can be good being on your own for a little while.
Yeah, absolutely. That's been a massive life lesson for me, and something that I had to relearn the hard way, that there is real power, because we're so, it's not DNA to have connections and to be with other people. We're hardwired to seek out social interaction. But there's something deeply powerful about being in your own space and understanding who you are as a person. And you can't really do that if you're constantly surrounded by other people and don't allow yourself that solitude and that solitary moment to be by yourself. You know, it's not like go to live as a monk or a nun, but I do think we all need that time by ourselves. I think it's really important.
What I say to people is, if you're going to recover, if you've been through a trauma, if you've been through a relationship trauma, is be on your own. Get good at being on your own. It'll hurt for a bit. And it's painful, but pain's a little bit like, I always tell people, pain's a little bit like voodoo. It'll hurt, but then nothing else happens. And people used to have this belief in voodoo that yeah, it would only affect them if they believed in it. But it didn't really do anything unless you wanted it to actually affect you. And I remember sort of having a terrible relationship breakup and actually thinking, this is really bad. This actually hurts. There's a pain here. But it didn't then get any worse. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to be in pain, but I can still function. I can still get on with my life.
Yeah.
And it's through that pain that I think I learned to build a really strong edifice of learning to be on my own. And it's a good place to go strong, because you then realize when you venture out in the world and you want to be with someone else again, you'll probably be a lot more resilient to abuse, because you know as bad as it gets is you'll just go back to that old position of being on your own, which was actually pretty okay in the end. So if you've got this nice position to fall back to that, you know, I'm kind of okay with that, it didn't really bother me, you're never going to get into a relationship where you are abused for a long period, because you will let go of it, you will move away from it, and you will get back to where you need to be again.
Yeah, absolutely. I really resonate with that. So I think that's a real powerful thing that people need to hear, because I think a lot of people are very scared of being on their own and worry that it somehow will be something, you know, catastrophic and it'll be awful. But actually, there's real strength in it, like you said. So thank you for saying that. I think it was important to say.
You're very welcome. And I'll be honest with you, this is what has led to the second book. I recently generated a new website. So recently, it took me about a year. And I wanted to model it a little bit on what Martin Lewis does with his money saving expert. But I thought, wouldn't it be nice if there was a free resource for people where you could go on there and you could look to resolve your own issues free of charge? You know, you can gain the information that I use as a mediator and negotiator to resolve your own issues. So I created this website called resolveanydispute.com because it sounded nice and it tripped up. And I was about to launch it, and a friend of mine saw a post on there, and I showed it to a mate of mine called Lee, and he went, whoa, he went, that should be a book. And I went, what do you mean? He went, that post is a book. I will pay money for that. And I'd done a small post on how I separated from my ex-partner for £125. And he went, that's a book. And I went, it's a post. He went, no, turn it into a book. He said, put everything you know. And he said, tell me your story. So I told him a story of how I separated from a long-term partner and how we decided to actually sit down and do it together, not have any solicitors, any accounts, any finances. And we separated and sorted out everything. And it cost us £125. He went, you've got to put that down. And as ever, things grow and grow and grow. And I spoke about my divorce and how I managed to resolve that really amicably, and had a very good solicitor who told me how to do a lot of the work myself. And I never thought I was actually going to come out, because I rewrote it so many times. 1 year in, I got this, and I couldn't think of a title, and I ended up calling it Letting Go Gently. And I think I'm so proud of it, Katie. It's the first time I've managed to actually put something down. This is a book that teaches you how to deal with a hard financial problem with soft skills. It is about that. And the opening, if you get the book, you'll find out where Letting Go Gently comes from. There's a whole story behind that I was told, and a lesson that I was taught by someone when I was going through a really traumatic period. And I actually went off to see a therapist myself, because we all need a bit of therapy, even other therapists. And he just taught me one thing, and it built a bedrock of how I managed to resolve my own issues. And it made me look at my life and led me down the route of mediation.
Wow, because I was going to ask you what led you to the work that you do, because it's something that you always wanted to do, or was it did you kind of fall into it because it felt like it was destined? I mean, I'm always interested in people, how they end up where they are, because I think it's never a straightforward path.
I've got the most interesting and convoluted route to becoming a mediator. I I didn't even know what the job was. About 15 years ago or more, there was a movie released called Inside Man with Clive Owen and Jodie Foster and Denzel Washington. And it was about a bank robbery. And at one point, to resolve this bank robbery, they contact this character, this figure played by Jodie Foster, who isn't a police officer. And we're not really sure who she is, but they bring her in to resolve this case. And I was fascinated by her character. And I didn't even know who she was or what she did. And I used to watch this film loads and loads of times. And I just think I love that role of being in the middle of something, slightly detached from it, but being able to bring something new to it. And I kind of forgot all about it for many, many years until I started working as a clinical healthcare manager. And I had a guy one day who was going to be thrown out of his flat. He'd had issues with his mental health, and he'd basically fallen foul of the housing authorities. And I thought, I wonder if I could help. So I got him in a room with the housing officer and got them to talk and settle their differences. And a light bulb went off in my head. And I thought, oh, I like this. I thought, yeah, brilliant. So I did a bit of a Dick Whittington. I packed my bags for London with a little stick over my shoulder with a
cat,
and a cat, gotta have a cat. And I went off to the London School of Mediation. I quit everything I knew and went off and studied mediation. Came back and started mediating because I'd got quite good at it in my previous role. I'd worked with the police 3 times to help resolve some crisis negotiations, and it just literally grew from there. And then I kind of went back to that movie again recently. I watched it with Jodie Foster, where she's a little bit sort of, you're not really, actually it's a bit dodgy in it when you watch her now. She's a bit of a dodgy character, a bit of a power broker. But I think it really was my inspiration for wanting to just resolve issues. And I'm very, very fortunate. I get to work with national company now who's very well respected and got awards for what they do, and get to help a lot of people in my role. So real bucket list there, real job done, ticked.
Yeah, it's good though. I have lots of strings to my bow, and my J's been very, but I always think everything you've done adds up to take you where you're supposed to be, because nothing is wasted. You know, it all feels like it's all a path that's been predestined almost for you, you know?
I think the experiences that I've had in my life growing up, and some of the experiences growing up in a large inner city, always made me question how people respond in conflict. Dispute resolution, conflict resolution is something that absolutely fascinates me. And many years ago, I picked up a book by a guy called Bill Urey called Getting to Yes.
Right.
He was a conflict resolution expert. And it's something that just held my attention throughout. As opposed to, we spoke about these people who, you know, I believe this is right, I believe that is right. What if you're both right? And what if you're both wrong as well at the same time? You know, what is that resolution that we can actually look for? I'm thinking there's the picture that I've seen with 2 people stood looking at the floor, and there's a large symbol on the floor, and one guy looks at it and says it's 6, and the other guy's looking at it upside down and says no, it's not, it's 9. That's sometimes akin to what mediation is.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen that. It's right. You know, it's all about your perspective, and it's all about your own beliefs, and the way that you're approaching stuff doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong. It's just your take on it, and trying to see somebody else's take on it can really help you to kind of meet in the middle. So yeah, I totally agree with you on that one. So what do you wish that you'd known when you first started out on this journey that you know now?
That you don't need to know the law. for years. And I was thinking about it the other night. I was watching a TV series, a favorite TV series of mine that I've started to explore again, called The West Wing. And many years ago, I was a massive fan. And I always used to think to myself, I either wanted to have a degree in the law or know about the law. And I think I spent a lot of time wondering and thinking, would I ever do this? Would I ever take a law degree? And when I went off and studied mediation, the one thing I think I was the only non-legal person on the course. I was the only non-legal person on the course. I thought, great, I'm in a room full of barristers, solicitors, lawyers, judges, and there's me. What do you do? Clinical healthcare manager. And they said to me at the end, don't worry that you don't know anything about the law. They went, mediation is about people. Mediation is about resolutions. It's about emotion. And so many times people get bogged down in things like garden law. And, garden law says this and the law says that. Yeah, but you try enforcing the law. It takes an awful lot to do it. It's easier if you can just talk and listen to each other. That's the one thing that I wish I'd known a long time ago. And probably the irony, because I'm talking a lot today because it's an interview, is something else I actually learned along the way in life is I now spend 80% of my time in life listening and just 20% asking questions.
Absolutely. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and I think sometimes people think it's the other way around, right? I'm a big talker as well. Those of you who know me well will be laughing at us because I like to talk. But at the same time, listening is more important than talking. And when you listen to people, that's where connection and developing that connection really develops, I think. It's like you can't fully appreciate what someone's going through and who they are and how they feel and what they've been through unless you stop and listen, and actually listen to understand, not listen waiting for your turn to talk. Not think about what you're going to say, but actually listening to them.
There's a guy called Chris Voss, and he wrote an excellent book, and I was so lucky. I threw some money at doing some one-to-one training with him, and he's an ex-FBI hostage negotiator. And he calls this tactical empathy. And it's something I try and practice every day. It's not only listening, it's not only understanding, it's understanding that you know what's going on behind the emotions and causing it, but demonstrating to that person that you understand, that you know what's going on behind the emotions, and acting and responding accordingly. And when you can do that, you can then start to maybe not so much manipulate someone, but guide someone back into a better place. Because the minute you've got that empathy, the minute somebody thinks, do you know what, this guy gets me, he knows exactly what I'm about, you're going to build up that real positive connection, and you're going to have that influence that you can guide someone to a better place. Trust-based influence is what you're. Of
course it is, because we all want to be seen, we all want to be heard, and we all want to be understood. So if you make an effort to do that in all your relationships, you will just find that life just not always, but tends to go a lot easier and a lot smoother, rather than just like it doesn't matter, because it really does. It's like the foundation of everything, isn't it?
And this is what I hit upon when I started to help people resolve their issues around mediation and relationships. And this is why I've set myself up and started to become a divorce and separation coach. Is you are with someone as a partner, and the two of you have so much in common, and you have all this brilliant empathy, and you understand each other, and you get on really well, and suddenly one day it goes like this. One of you's over here and one of you's over there, and you're turning away from each other. You don't understand each other anymore. And the first thing you do is you call the solicitors in. And that bill goes up the minute you pick up the phone. So what I've started to say to people is, look, wait a minute. Why don't you just both turn back around and face each other again? Why don't you acknowledge and accept that actually you know this other person really well? You've already got everything you need to deal with the person who you are divorcing or separating with, because you know them.
Yeah.
And they know you. You know how they're going to respond and react. You know what they're going to be good at and what they're not going to be great at. And this is what my ex-partner and I discovered, is the one thing that we wanted was our son to have two nice homes when we separated. And you have to think of that. And we thought, well, you know, when he's not going to be a pawn, he's not going to be used in our separation. We still had that real empathy for each other of how our new lives were going to work. So it was a simple case of, let's use what we know, let's use what we've got, and let's do this nice and quickly and cheaply and easily.
Yeah.
As opposed to when people suddenly, it's like they'll often say people fall out of integrity with each other. I think people fall out of empathy with each other.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to be honest, there's been hurt, there's been anger, people have done things wrong. And I think people get too caught up in that, is they'll say, this person did this to me in the relationship, so I want my day in court. I want my day in court, and I want to see them in the witness box. I said, brilliant, let's go for it. And that will cost you £15,000. Think, what else could you spend £15,000 on that will last you longer than one day in court? You can see your ex squirm in the witness box and admit to infidelities and horrible things if you really want to. Man alive, you could also have a Mercedes or a really nice cruise around the world. What would be better?
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. And so it's funny because I watched there's a wonderful vlog on social media from Will Smith, and he talks about the difference between fault and responsibility. And so fault is when like somebody's done something to you and it's their fault and they're to blame, and being like angry and bitter, and you can't change what's happened. And it's never to say that it's okay for someone to hurt you, but that doesn't mean that you have to carry that around with you, because it keeps you in that victim mode. It's your responsibility to do better and want better for yourself, to move on from that space, right? That's the key.
We never forgive for the other person, we forgive for ourselves. There's a very famous book by a lady who became world renowned for her forgiveness. There's a famous picture of a young girl in Vietnam War who was hit by a napalm bomb and all the clothes are burnt off with her, and she's been led away by an American soldier. She released a book on forgiveness. And on the front cover of the book, I think I'm correct in saying there was a picture of this lady embracing the guy who pressed the button, who dropped the napalm bomb on her. And she said, I forgive him, but I forgive him for myself, not for him. I forgive him so I let go. Yeah. And that is one of the things that forms the core of what I'm trying to say to people here, is if you let go of this hatred gently, if you let go of it, as opposed to just dropping everything and really being hostile and aggressive, if you let go gently, you think more coherently. You stay out of the emotions and you're more in that logical mind, and you start to reorganize. You know, we're talking about reposition, reorientation, recovery, regeneration. You start to then reposition yourself and stay in that calm, logical mind. When you do that, you can resolve your issues. You can get over your hurts and past harms and move on a hell of a lot quicker with no stress, no pantomime. So that whole thing of forgiveness. Remember, forgiveness is great, but remember why you're forgiving. You're forgiving for you, so you let go.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's been, you feel, your hardest lesson on this path so far, and what did it teach you, do you think?
Gosh, what's my hardest lesson? Do you know what? I'll tell you my hardest lesson: denial. The biggest mistake I ever made when I was separating from someone was, this will get better, this will recover, it'll all be okay, it's not really happening. And one day it just hit me around the head when I woke up on my own, and I suddenly looked around and said to myself, how did this happen? How did I get here? And I woke up every morning. How did this happen? How on earth did this happen? How did I get here? The simple answer was you didn't keep your eye on what was actually going on in your life. And even when it came that close to your face, you still didn't acknowledge it. You still didn't accept it. It's one of the chapters of my book. It's called Ask a Better Question. When something is hitting you in the face every morning, if you're waking up going, well, I don't know what to do. Well, how did this happen? How did I get here? Why don't you start asking yourself what needs to happen next?
Yeah.
What's the first thing I need to do? If I'd have done that harsh lesson of grounding myself in reality and actually saying to myself, right, boom, this is over, Jace. What needs to happen now? What do you need to do? How do you need to broker this? How do you need to move forward? What could come next? What could be after that? It would have saved a lot of pain, a lot of heartache, and a lot of absolute denial. And again, it just brings me back to lockdown. Is a lot of people, we're talking about that post-traumatic stress and people coming out of lockdown, is people are going to be coming out of lockdown now who have been trapped in bad relationships, and they're going to be thinking, I don't know what to do. I'm stuck in this relationship now. It's really bad. It's really awful. Why don't you, the first thing you do is you ask yourself, what do I want? What needs to happen next?
Yeah.
How can I move forward from this? And your unconscious mind is beautiful. It is absolutely perfect, beautiful, lovely tool, because the minute you ask it a better question, it will immediately zoom in and start to give you some better answers. Maybe not straight away, but in a day or so's time of you asking positive questions, it will start to give you some positive answers.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's beautiful. As somebody who's been through breakdowns as well with relationships, I think absolutely taking control of the situation is key to taking your power back. So I really like that. And I hope people can really take that away from this and start to ask those better questions of their lives and themselves so that they can focus on what they actually want moving forward. So, yeah.
Do you know what I put right at the beginning of my book? And I put it right at the beginning. You can read the first few pages free on Amazon. You can even see it's in there. It's literally just what you've said. You've just quoted me. Take control of the process.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the secret. It's a secret to any situation, any resolution. If it's a divorce, a separation, no matter what it is, take control of the process of it. Don't let other people control the process. You decide what is going to happen, when, where, and how. Decide how it's going to work. Decide when meetings take place. Decide what you want to talk about. Prepare. People won't prepare for this sort of thing. They'll go into mediations, and I'll always say to people, if you're going to go into a mediation, if I'm doing a coaching mediation session, look, even though it's mediation and the mediator's looking for a win-win, I can actually coach you and show you how to get that win-win. And one of the things I do is keep thinking about what you want. Don't be rigid, don't be truculent, don't just go no to everything. Think further down the line, but still keep thinking, what do you want now? Where are you going to be in 5 years' time? It's all well and good people being, some people get very, I don't know, I think the word's very magnanimous, and they'll give everything away and they'll have nothing, and they'll feel really good about themselves. But where are you going to be financially in a few years' time? You're going to need some money. Yes. You're going to need some resources. So always thinking about that. Take control of the process, not in a Machiavellian evil way, but just for your own good, for your own wellness. Know that you've got a hand, and you've got a good controlling hand in your own separation.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. So if you could, a bit of a light-hearted question, if you could get into a DeLorean with Marty McFly and the Duck and travel back to any point in your childhood, what would you say to your younger self, knowing what you know now?
Oh, wow. Don't go and watch a film called Dogville, because it's really awful, and I walked out after the first 15 minutes.
Of all the answers that I've had on that question, I've never had that answer before.
No, I just remember going to watch this film, Dogville. Oh, God, I wish I'd never come to this. It's shocking. I snuck out and watched a cowboy film that was much better. What would I actually say to myself if I could go back and speak to my younger self in my DeLorean? learn to still and calm your mind. I'm a huge fan of Eckhart Tolle. As the man says, he opens his book with, "I've never had much use or much time for the past." And I read that book and thought, kindred spirit. Thought is the enemy. We all have way too many thoughts. Just learn to still and calm your mind. When it doesn't matter what is happening to you, it doesn't matter what point you're at anything in your life. If you can keep a calm, still mind, if you can stay in your logical brain and not react emotionally, you've got an 80% chance of coming out of it in a much better situation you went in. And I always say that now, is everything that I experienced that was negative, that was bad in relationship breakouts and fallouts, is that I came out of it stronger and better, but I came out of it with a calm mind. That would be my one piece of advice to my younger self.
Beautiful, beautiful. And last question, Jason. So I called these the glow interviews because I wanted to bring some light to people's lives, some light to the darkness. And so in that vein, what lights you up and brings you joy every day?
The music to The West Wing, because I started watching it again. It's sound. I am so auditory. I told you I spoke to a gentleman a minute ago, and we booked some sessions in for him from stress and anxiety. Hearing the lift in his voice, hearing my favorite author Robert Greene narrate one of his books, that calms and relaxes me. Choosing a great piece of music to listen to, and every time I hear the opening music to The West Wing, I think, oh, this is going to be a good 45 minutes. It's beautiful sounds. Beautiful.
I have that with RuPaul's Drag Race. We're obviously very different. Oh, goodness me. Lovely, Jason. Thank you so much. And where can people find out about you and the work that you do? Where can they find you?
I'm the most easy to discover guy in the world. There are loads and loads of work. If you just put Jason Edwards Hypnotherapy, you'll come to my therapy site and you'll find out all about the books and the divorce coaching. If you go onto Amazon, if you put Monsters Live Amongst Us, it will come up with the book that became a bestseller, which blew me away. I didn't even know it was a bestseller till Amazon told me. But if you're looking for something new, original and different, and you can find me through there, family issues, work issues, relationship issues, business issues, neighborhood issues, resolveanydispute.com. Go and take a look at it. You don't have to spend a fortune on massive legal fees. And if you're going through unfortunate things at work, and I know a lot of people are going through issues at work at the moment, there's pages and pages and pages of information to help you resolve your issues at work, to help you resolve your issues in business. It's free. It's a completely free resource. Take a look at it. You might need it after lockdown.
Wonderful. And I will put all the links down here. So if you are interested in anything that Jason said, just go and have a look at the description box and you can go and find everything you need. But honestly, thank you so much, Jason. This has been such a good conversation. And I think it's been a valuable one. I think we've learned an awful lot and we've gained an awful lot from it. So thank you so much for spending this time with me. And I hope this has been a really interesting one for you as well.
It's been great. And thank you for being the first person to let me bang on about the book for 45 minutes.
No, it was fascinating. And I think it's much needed. I think it's very timely conversation, like we say, as lockdown is ending. So I hope that you found it interesting. And I wish you all lots of love. Stay safe. And I will definitely see you on the next one. Bye.